I know a girl in South Texas who actually posted a video, I think yesterday morning, and it was really sad because she was incredibly upset. She raises the same type of rabbit that I do, which is the TAMUK Composite, and she ended up losing some of her rabbits due to heat stress.
Today has been probably one of the hardest days I've had to deal with as being a breeder for rabbits. I came to the barn and I found two of my best breeders that had died, and also two litters due to the heat. If you don't know, Texas had one of the hottest days today and it was very brutal. To say I'm upset would be an understatement. I'm just kind of posting this for anyone that thinks that people don't struggle. These are a testament to that. So people struggle, I feel very bad, and I wish I could have done something better. We had fans going, everything. To say I'm heartbroken is very sad.
Now, I don't want to go through the whole video because it's quite long, but I did want to actually post a response, not to her, but to any of you who are planning on raising TAMUK composite rabbits, or if you have them already and you may be struggling with the same thing. This is a realistic outcome of having livestock and doing animal husbandry. And so I feel like it's fair that we address the real problems, because even though they are a heat-tolerant breed, it doesn't mean that they're immune to heat stress. So I would really like to dig into some of that right now. Now, for those of you who don't know, the TAMUK composite rabbits, which are the same breed of rabbit that me and this girl raised, were bred at A&M in Kingsville. I do know that her climate and my climate are very similar, even though they're probably like a 5-hour difference traveling on the road. They get a little bit hotter than we do, and they're probably quite a bit more humid considering she's pretty much coastal. As far as heat tolerance goes, like, the South is the South. And we, I believe, are in the high 90s to low hundreds this week. And when I checked the Houston area, which I think is close to her, they're about the same. If you're not familiar with TAMUK, it's actually TAMUK, and then you put -C, which is composite, which is a different line of the TAMUK breed of rabbits. TAMUK stands for Texas A&M University at Kingsville, and that's why we're specifically talking about the Kingsville location, not the other one that's somewhere near Jasper, I think. The whole reason that they bred these rabbits through these generations was to have like a homestead animal, or a backyard meat rabbit, if you will, to be able to survive the harsh conditions of the South. Basically, to be heat tolerant. Basically, you'd be able to breed these rabbits in your backyard, and they'd be able to pretty much survive without having a ton of interventions, and actually be able to produce a really good crop for your homestead. If they were able to survive in the heat and continue on breeding lines of this that would be sufficient for a homestead backyard grower. If you're not familiar with the research that was done by Dr. Stephen Lufar, what he did was he honed in on specific adaptations that rabbits use while trying to cool themselves during heat stress. Not every rabbit is going to possess these traits equally, but whenever you're able to actually breed these into your herd and it starts becoming a repeatable pattern that you can actually track, then you know that you're breeding something for the traits for heat tolerance. So even if you don't breed TAMUK composite rabbits, you can actually breed this into your herd over a period of time. And a lot of people will actually do that. I do want to go over how rabbits actually cool themselves. I actually want to link all the research down below, so if you want to go look at it yourself, you can. In the case of people, what we do is we sweat, and our sweat glands secrete like a saltwater mineral type fluid, and when the air blows across us, it cools our skin. Well, these animals are filled with fur instead of sweat glands. And one of the things that the TAMUK rabbits were bred for was to have shorter, less dense fur, and so they selected for that over time. They were also bred for these like giant ears, and what happens is the heat that circulates through their body is going to go out their blood vessels through their ears. Another thing that they do is they'll start breathing really rapidly. One more thing that they do, and this is probably why people come up with the cool tile technique, which is where they will go and they'll freeze tile. The rabbits will lay on a cool surface, and it will help cool their body as they lay and stretch out. So if you have like good airflow going through underneath your rabbits, that's another way if you don't have a cool tile technique, like if you're off grid or something and you can't freeze tiles. I don't freeze tiles. I just let my rabbits have the cool air and I put them under a nice shade, and that's about how I manage it unless it's an emergency situation. But I'll get to dealing with that here in a sec. Usually rabbits in the wild, when they're really, really hot, and if you tractored rabbits, you'll probably notice this, but they will dig holes and they will hang out in their little burrow, because usually when you get underground, and sometimes you'll find that they dig holes really, really deep underground, they will dig a deep, deep hole and you won't even be able to fit your hand all the way into it because it's so dang deep. It's probably 3 or 4 feet underground, and they will stay cool under there, because I think if you get 5 or 6 feet underground, it's like an ambient temperature of 55 to 70 degrees. So, I mean, they're smart creatures. If they're in a situation where they like have to get like cool and they have the option of digging underground, they're gonna do it. The temperature outside isn't always just the problem. So when these animals were bred for their specific heat tolerance, it was more along the lines of like the heat tolerance in Texas, which tends to be high humidity and high heat. So if you're in like a hot, humid climate, that's like a lot worse than if you're like in a hot, dry climate. I can tolerate up to like 115 in the desert without needing shade or whatever. I'm fine. But 85 outside, humid, Texas, it's really uncomfortable. Now, your ideal production temperatures are typically going to be between like 60 degrees and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like, you know, an ambient temperature. It's something that we're comfortable with. I mean, you would sleep in that, you'd walk around in it during the day. I mean, that's comfortable for us, right? Well, it's the same for them. When you get to like 75 to like 85, they're still tolerating it. They may be getting uncomfortable. At about 85, they're gonna start having some dietary changes. They're probably gonna start eating less, maybe start drinking a little more water. If you're trying to breed your animals, and again, this is normal commercial breed, ARBA type rabbits, purebreds or whatever, you're gonna start seeing decreases in like their fertility if you're trying to breed them and something like that. Over 95 degrees, your heat stress is going to start becoming very likely, and once you get over the 100 degree mark, you may start having some life-threatening situations with your rabbits. Now with TAMUK rabbits, it's a little bit different. It's not like a mega huge difference, but there is quite a big difference between a TAMUK composite rabbit and a, I guess, commercial or purebred rabbit, because those rabbits are not being bred for the heat tolerance. They're being bred for meat production and aesthetic traits. When you have homesteaders and other breeders breeding for the traits of heat tolerance, they are making sure that the rabbits that they are breeding are going to be carrying on that heat tolerance, that they're surviving and their litters are surviving in this summertime. they're going to be making sure that they're breeding that into their lines. So every single time they're going to have the survival bred into them over time. So those traits are getting like stacked into their lineages, and they're holding back the rabbits that are actually producing really well. One thing I do want to touch on is when you are out looking for a rabbit because you want heat tolerance, you actually want to make sure that the breeder that you are buying your rabbits from is actually breeding for those traits, and not just like, oh yeah, it's a TAMUK rabbit, so therefore it's heat tolerant. If you have a rabbit breeder but they've got to sell these kits because that's their business, then you are not able to ensure that they're actually breeding for these traits. You should definitely look into the breeder and ask them a ton of questions, like what are the traits that you're breeding for? When do you breed your animals? Because if you're buying TAMUKs during the winter, that's kind of weird. I'm not saying that doe isn't going to produce the best kits, and that's not saying that if you buy TAMUK rabbits or heat tolerant rabbits during the winter that you're not going to get a heat tolerant rabbit. But I would say nature is really, really smart and really, really intuitive. But what actually happens during heat stress when your rabbit is going into heat stress? If the heat load is a little bit mild, then you might see things like them stretching out. They might start breathing a little bit harder. Theirs might get a little hot, maybe warm. They won't be like super mega hot. They're gonna start drinking a lot more water, and they're probably gonna start eating less. When you get to the moderate level of heat stress, they're gonna be doing more of those things. But you also may see their fertility start to drop. You really won't know that until like 30 plus days after you try to breed them in these current situations. When you get into the situation of having a severe heat stress event, they're gonna start panting a lot. Their mouth is gonna gape open while they're breathing. They may start drooling. They may look weak, not want to interact. They may also lose coordination. So if you see them stumbling around or just kind of being like, you know, that might become a serious situation. As soon as you start seeing something like that, drooling is like the number one thing that you look out for whenever you are looking for signs of heat stress in your rabbits. It means they're on their way to being in a bad situation. When it's super, super critical, is when they start convulsing, or they lose consciousness, they pass out, and in the worst case situation, they are no longer with us. I can't imagine that it's a comfortable situation for the breeder or the rabbit to go through, as evidenced by the video that my friend had. I'm so proud of her for taking the step of getting into meat rabbits, because it takes a lot to get into animal husbandry, and what she did was learn something very complicated very quickly. And even though you cannot be perfect on day one, there's no amount of learning something before you start doing it that will prepare you for certain situations. It's difficult losing an animal, but especially when they're your breeders, it's hard. It's really hard when you become attached to some of these rabbits to let them go or to watch them die because of natural causes. I mentioned something about rabbits going through extended periods of heat. So if there's like a heat stress event and it's just like one pop and then it's done, like one day it just spikes and then it comes back down, that's one thing. But one of the problems that rabbits have is when it's a prolonged period of time, because they don't have a time period to cool down. Typically, especially in Texas where it's humid, or anywhere in the South where it's like humid, you got humid, hot weather, and that in itself is hard to breathe in. but you don't really get a break. At nighttime, a rabbit, if it's able to cool off during the nighttime periods, that gives them some time to like buffer and like reset their body and everything like that. It can drop up to 40 degrees in the desert. If you were able to like have a 115 degree day and the rabbits survive, it's gonna drop down into the 60s at nighttime and they'll be able to cool down. But in Texas or anywhere in the South, basically, where it's hot and humid, they don't really get much of a buffer because it doesn't cool down a ton over here. Their body is going to store that. If they're not able to like release it, then they're basically going to be retaining that heat in the next day. And so when it starts heating up in the morning, it's just going to accumulate over time. And after days or weeks of having this heat stress, they're going to be worn out, they're not going to be productive, and they're going to be like deteriorating. So if they're able to dissipate some of that heat during the nighttime, then they will be a lot more comfortable and probably not heat stressed. I don't want to tell you that they will be heat stress tolerant, but they'll be better off if they're able to cool off at nighttime. I want to breathe that heat tolerance into them. So I won't put fans on them, but they do have open access to the wind, and it's pretty breezy here constantly because we're in Tornado Alley. We get a lot of breezes. I actually have to worry about protecting my rabbits from wind because it gets so crazy here sometimes. But I have 360 access to my rabbits on all sides of their hutches to the breeze, and so we get a lot of really good breezes and they're able to cool off from the underside. So I guess that's more than 360. They get all 4 sides of them and then the underside. Then they have a shade roof on top of them. I have them under a tree canopy, so they get a little bit of the eastern sun, but everything else, the north, south, west, everything is basically covered by trees. So they get a little bit of sun in the morning. The flaps, which are the tarps that hang over at nighttime, I won't lift them up all the way in the morning. And then whenever the sun passes over the roof, I'll lift them all the way up. Their cages are completely open to the breezes. Another thing that I do is on the especially hot days, I will come out and I'll change their waters constantly because they'll be flipping their waters over just because they're buttholes. But they'll also be dipping their feet into it, which is probably more of the case. They like to dip their feet in the water. If I see that I have a couple of rabbits that are really struggling, I will actually go out there with cool water and I'll rub their ears with cool water because remember, the heat is dissipating from their ears, and with TAMUK-C they have really large ears, and so I'll take cool water and I'll cool their ears down with that. I don't like to use this technique every single day, just when it's, a problem, but some people will also put cold tiles in their hutches for their rabbits. I've heard of the water balloon technique. My friend PJ with Rose Oak Ranch, she breeds a lot of really, really big TAMUK rabbits. She'll do the water balloon method where it's basically you freeze water balloons and then you bust them open and then you throw them in the hutch with your rabbit, your cages, whatever, and they will lick it or lay on it, whatever they need to do to stay cool. A lot of people put fans directly on their rabbits. As we said, breathing in that hot, humid weather is choking sometimes. So keeping the airflow going is really, really good. So if you have that natural shade is a really big deal. The shade under the trees is so much different than the shade under a building structure. Think about this. When the sun is shining on a structure, that structure is absorbing the heat. But when the sun is shining on a leaf of a plant, like a big tree, not only is it absorbing it, but it's transmuting that energy into the soil so that the soil life can feed on the sugars that is produced by photosynthesis. So it's not retaining that heat. Go and feel a leaf in the canopy of a tree, and then go and feel the top of a metal roof on top of your house. And tell me the difference. For the end of this, I actually wanted to include this. It's actually a composition of the research that is attached to a lot of the statements that I've made in this. It's the research for heat tolerance and some of the research for the stuff that was done at Texas A&M in Kingsville. If you have any questions about any of this, go ahead and leave it in the comments. If you're on a different platform other than YouTube, go ahead and comment somewhere down there. So other than that, like, this is all I got. If any of you are struggling with a situation where you have heat-tolerant rabbit and it's not really making it, try to implement some of those solutions with the cold plates, the water balloons being frozen, and increasing your airflow and natural shade. Like, that is huge. Like, you... At the very worst case scenario, you have to bring a rabbit in. And hopefully you don't have like 40 rabbits like I do. And then you won't have to bring all 40 of them in. But shade is a huge one. So if there's anything else that I can help you guys with, please let me know. Other than that, have a great day.